This, I suggest you take your toes and move them in a bit because I could stand on them. No, kidding. And if you ever get the sensation that you're drinking from a fire hydrant, welcome to the club. That's the world I live in. Things happen quickly. I love it. I love the energy of the world I live in. I love the energy of learning new things. And I'm hoping to get you energized and enthused. And this thing, it's got some good aspects. You know, I realized I didn't even show a video last time. You know, I've got to show you this one video. No, actually, we haven't got time for that. You want to see a video? Okay. Have any of you, you know, when I was going to show you a video about debt, and we just say, you know, whenever something goes wrong in our business or business failure, this is what people say. I've got to show you this. This is really funny. This is going back to the very beginning. I'm going to show you this one. When people have business failure or debt or something, they say, you know, it's not my fault. That's the South Africanism. It's never your fault. It's always someone else's fault. I'm late for work. Why are you late for work, Johnny? The bus didn't wait for me. Have I ever heard this? I'm late for work because the bus didn't wait for me. Okay, that's interesting. So, wrong place, wrong time. So, if you think you're in the wrong place in the wrong time and that's why you got problems, have a look at this. Watch this guy's hands. Watch what his hands do. There you go. I give up. Okay, wrong place, the wrong time. And you were set up, weren't you? Man, that's great. I love that. Where were we, folks? I get distracted easily. I love these videos. I'm weird, you know. Most people put their glasses on to present and read. I take mine off to read. And you know, it's that time of our lives when things just don't work at the right distances, making decisions. There we go. Right, the question that answers just about everything. I got you thinking now, haven't I? You know, we're all faced with decisions every day. Should I buy it? Shouldn't I buy it? Should I go there? Shouldn't I go there? Where should we go? Where shouldn't we go? What should I do? Should I leave the firm? Should I stay? Should I take the new job? Should I move house? Should I keep the old house? Should we move city? We're faced with decisions, barrages of decisions all the time, and we're overwhelmed at times, aren't we? We don't know how. So I thought, let's look about this. Let's look at, because in business you're talking about making decisions. We make decisions all the time. We make decisions personally as well. How do we make decisions? What would be some good advice? I believe that what I'm about to share with you, if you'd applied this question to your life to date, a lot of the regrets that you've had, a lot of the anxiety, a lot of the stress, a lot of the money, a lot of the problems that you've had, your heartaches, wouldn't have happened if you just asked this one question. If you can think back, and we all think back to your greatest regret. Maybe your greatest regret was a weekend away. Maybe your greatest regret was a business venture. Maybe it was a game that you played. Maybe it was a person that you went out with. Maybe it was your first marriage. If you think back to your greatest regret, it could have been a relationship, and you superimpose this question, chances are you wouldn't have that regret as you sit here. So if I can empower you today with this one question, I know that lives will change and continue to change as you take this and teach others as well. And that's what I urge you. Don't just learn for yourself. Take notes and teach others. That's the model set in Scripture. Teach others also what I've taught you. That's what Jesus taught. That's what Paul taught. He says, everything I've taught you, go and teach others. That's the last thing he left when he left the planet. He said, go and make disciples, teaching them all that I taught you. So this is part of that discipling process. I want you to take it on. We were introduced to Paul the Apostle. And when we first read about Paul in the pages of history, Paul was a hater of the church. He couldn't stand the church. He was one of the most avid critics, to the point that he would have Christians persecuted, tortured, flogged, beaten, put to death. Paul was an avid hater of the church. And then in one glorious day, he met the living God. And his life changed, and fortunately for us, his life did change. Because Paul went on to write most of the Old Testament, the New Testament, and give us fantastic scripture, fantastic guidance. And then Paul became, as I said, the most prolific writer in the New Testament. So let's look at his words. Now that's interesting. What's on there is not on here. Hang on a second. Hold your horses. There you go. Got it. Okay. Ephesians chapter 5. Be very careful, then, how you live. And some versions say how you walk. Be careful how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise. So Paul is writing to their context as a lover of the church, and his instruction is live as wise people, not as unwise. And that's what I want to talk about today. How to live as wise people. Society is tough. We've heard through the questions and the discussions I've had at tea time. It's not easy out there. It really isn't easy at times, particularly in business. It's tough. Society doesn't understand what we do. Society sees things very differently. So how then do we live? And Paul is saying to us, folks, don't live as unwise, but live as wise people. Making the most of every opportunity, and some versions say your time, because the days are evil. So if we take a look around us, and we just look at the way the world does things, the way the world conducts itself, very soon we'll realize that if we just go with the flow, if we just lift up our feet in the current that we're in, the current of society, lift up your feet and you go for a while with that flow, we all know we're going to end up in a place we don't want to be. It doesn't take a lot of observation to see that. It doesn't take a lot of teaching. It's so obvious. And Paul's saying it, guys, conduct yourselves wisely. Make the most of your time, of your opportunities. Don't go with the flow of society. And we've been saying this, you actually have to go counterflow, either across the stream or upstream. It's hard, it's difficult. But if you just let go, you're going to end up in a place that you really don't want to end up in. And then verse 17 says, so don't be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. So to me it's obvious. What is the will of the Lord? That we conduct ourselves wisely. Unfortunately, people are people. Faiths around the world are similar, religions are religions. People everywhere look for loopholes, look for shortcuts. We were talking about it in business. People look for shortcuts, ways out of things. They're always looking for shortcuts. And they never, when they do find a shortcut, they are doing it knowingly, with knowledge. But they are aware that it is a shortcut. They're taking a deviation that they really oughtn't to be, but they're trying their luck. And Paul is saying, don't you as Christians do that. You know the difference between right and wrong. Don't do that. Don't take shortcuts. Don't be unwise. Be wise. So we're going to talk about that. So what is the key? What is the question? The question when you've got a decision to make is not what is the right thing to do. This is a way better question than that. Not what is the legal thing to do. This is a much, much better question than that. The question that you should be asking yourself is, what is the wise thing to do? When you're faced with a decision, ask that one simple question. What is the wise thing to do? Leave legality, leave the right thing to do, not what is everyone else doing, not what is expected of me. What is the wise thing to do? And you'll find that this will take a lot of the pain out of your situations. Am I getting forward here? Oh, there we go. So that's the question. What is the wise thing to do? I'm going to break it down into 3 dimensions, and that'll give us a lot more clarity. So the first dimension is your past. We all have a past. Whether you like it or not, you've got a past. And don't feel bad, but some of us, in fact, all of us, have things in our past we're not too proud of, things in our past we're not too happy of, and also things in our past we're extremely proud of, we're extremely grateful for. But we have a past. And here's what you need to know. Your past is your past. It's not my past. What you've done with your past, I haven't necessarily done. So when we take this question and we superimpose this dimension on it, in light of my past experiences, what is the wise thing to do? I'm getting a lot of detailed information on that question. But I can't use your past to give me the answer to my question. I must use my past. Consider your past. What have you learned in the past? What have you regretted in the past? What have you wish you could do again? What have you wish you'd never do again? In light of my past experiences, what is the wise thing to do? So, say to yourself, the last time I spent the night, the last time I stayed over, the last time I said yes, the last time I went into business, the last time we accepted a customer like that, the last time I did something. In light of that, what is the wise thing to do? So allow your past to teach you. Allow your past to bring wisdom. We're looking for wisdom here. Allow your past to do it. You've got a past that is yours uniquely. Allow it to learn from it. Someone has said once, I wish I could attribute to who said it, but if we don't learn from our past and the failures of our past, we're destined to repeat them. So we need to learn from the past, don't we? We need to kind of figure out, what is it telling us, what is it teaching us? If you ever ask yourself, why does history keep repeating itself? For me, why does history keep repeating itself for me? Why am I failing this subject again? Why am I failing in business again? Why am I financially strapped again? Why am I ending up in a dead-end relationship again? Why am I unhappy again? If you ever ask yourself that, it means you're not asking this question. You're not asking, in light of my past, what is the wise thing to do? Men particularly don't like to learn from the past. You know, we come up with another problem. It's the same problem we faced in the past, but somehow in our small minds we think, no, honey, sweetheart, I can handle it. I can handle it. This time it's going to be different. This time the outcome is going to be different. We're going to do everything we did the last time, but somehow the outcome is going to be different. I don't know how that works, but so you think you can manage it, but you can't if you're not taking cognizance of the past. Paul says, don't lie to yourself. Please, he's saying be wise. Don't lie to yourself. Be wise. So in light of my past experiences, what is the wise thing to do? Not an easy question, not a tough question, but when you get the answer, that must guide your actions. The second aspect is your current circumstances. So in light of your current circumstances, what is the wise thing to do? So you might be married now where you weren't before. You might be in a new job. You might be having your first child. You might be having your second child. Some of you might be having your third child. In light of my current circumstances, what is the wise thing to do? And that's going to give you insight and clarity how to make that decision. And the last aspect, and this is a great one, in light of your future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing to do? So here's the full question. And once I've said it, I want you to say it after me. in light of my past experiences, my current situation, and my future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing to do? Okay, you guys got that? Simple question that answers most other things. In light of my past experiences, my current situation, and my future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing to do? And when you dwell on those things, you start to get a lot more visibility. It is a pity that people throw away a future dream. So often people throw away, and it's a tragedy, to trade in tomorrow for something today that I know already I won't own tomorrow. Don't we do that in relationships? We're throwing away a future relationship for one that I have today, but I already know today it's not going to go the distance. And some of you are at that age where you're dating. Some of you have got daughters and sons that are dating. And you can see it happening to them. They're throwing away tomorrow's future hopes and dreams for something today, but they're not going to own it tomorrow. That is such a waste. You do that in business. People are going to business partnerships with people. You're throwing away the potential of the future, but you can see that this partnership is not going to last. So this means that when you hang around with people, you've got to be careful who you hang with, because some guys don't have future hopes and dreams. I've met some people that have no dreams. They have no hopes. They just live from party to party. They just live from one experience to the next. There's no planning in their lives. If you mix with them, you're not, the scripture is very clear about who you mix with becomes you. You become who you mix with. So be careful how you choose your friends. Now, can you imagine if you had been asking this question your whole life? How different things would have been. If you think back to that regret that you've got, or those regrets, many of us have got lots of regrets. If I'd asked this question, answered it honestly, and acted, would I have that regret? Probably not. Probably not. But that's what life is. Life's a teacher. You know, no one plans to mess up their lives. True? No one plans to mess up their lives. They just plan not. They don't plan not to. I don't know why I'm not getting this thing to move. Anyway. Houston, we have a problem. Slowly working. Here we go. I think it fell asleep. Am I talking too slowly? Okay, I'll speed up. My computer's even sleeping. Okay. Okay, so no one thinks, am I doing something wrong? Okay, so no one plans to mess up their lives. They just don't plan not to. So no one goes into their first marriage thinking, I wonder what my second marriage is going to be like. No one goes into business thinking, I wonder what's going to feel like when we liquidate it and insolve it. But if that's all you do, I mean, you don't do that, but if you don't do anything else, you might end up in that second business or that second marriage. You've got to take steps so you plan not to fail. So here's how you do. This is what you need to do. It's quite simple. Every opportunity, every possibility, every chance, every invitation, ask this question. Just ask this question. In light of my past experiences, my current reality, my future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing to do? And if you think about it, as I said, it was one of the pebbles from the previous talk, thinking about things like this, writing it down, you're equipping yourself to not fail. You're planning not to fail. So if you are chatting with your wife and discussing your marriage, ask that question. Both of you ask. If you're talking with your business partner, ask it. If you're talking to your colleagues at work or you're planning in your church meetings, ask these questions. Okay, so there's the question, the full question as we do it. You know, some people when I give this talk say, yeah, you know, I hear you, but I don't know, inside it sounds a little bit strange. It sounds a little bit, I don't know if I want to do that. If that's the kind of thought that's going on in your head, I can understand it, but here's what I'd say. If you're a little uncomfortable and thinking, I don't know if I really buy into this, I'd whisper in your ears and saying, you know what? by you saying, I don't know if I buy into this, what you're really saying is you don't have your best interest at heart. This is in your best interest. I'm not saying this to be religious. I'm not saying this to kind of give you a set of rules. I'm saying this because it's going to help you. And if you're resisting, guess what? You're learning something about yourself. You don't have your best interest at heart. And that's a possibility. It's quite possible that you don't have your best interest at heart, your best long-term interests. You're here maybe for the now. You're here for the instant. You're here for the immediate. And you haven't got a view of the future. You haven't got a hope for your future. So just let that be a bit of a point to consider. And if you don't ask this question, you could end up in a place you don't want to end up in. I'm going to take this question and apply it to something called time. In Job, we read, a person's days are determined. And, if you read the Old Testament, they certainly believe, the writers of the Old Testament certainly believed that God allotted periods of life. He was the author and the finisher. He gave people life and he set a number of days. He set it in writing. It's like the hourglass of a person's life. You turn it up, the sands of time are running, and God is in control. And he said, that's it. Now, you may or may not ascribe to that, but here's what we all have to acknowledge, that you're running out of time. You're running out of time. None of us here expect to live forever here in this body. So we know that every day we look up, there's a little bit more gray hairs here. Things are changing. So this much we all have to agree that you are running out of time. And Job said, a person's days are determined. You have determined his months, and he cannot exceed them. So, if that's the truth, we know that we can over-earn. We can always earn more money. We can always eat more food. We can overeat. But you can't overlive. You can't go and get more time. It's set. It's allocated. It's probably the most precious resource that's been given to us. So you can go and earn more money. You can buy more cars. You can get more wives if that's what you want to do. You can do a lot of things, but you can't get more time. So let's apply that question into the area of time. In light of my past experiences, my current position, my future hopes and dreams, what's the wise thing to do with my time? And when I read this, as it stood there, I thought, wow, I got to translate that into meetings that I have. Things that I do at the office, things that I come out with and say, oh, that was a waste. If I just wasted a morning or a day or worse still a week or a month, I'll never, ever get that back. And if I have nothing to show for it, wow, was it worth doing? Was it worth doing? I heard a really humorous story, but it's got a sharp point to it. I was talking to my computer seller yesterday, and he came out to drop off a PC, and he was laughing. I said, what are you laughing at? He said, I've just come from the old age home, the Amber Valley in Hilton. I said, what's happening? He said, no, there's this old guy, and I was fitting a machine, and he came. I said, can you get me a PC? I said, sure, sir. And now most of these old guys, these old timers, they just do a bit of email, a bit of internet. That's it. So you just need an entry-level PC. It's fine. For email and internet, an entry-level PC is fine. So I said, sir, I'll get you a standard entry-level PC, no problem. And the guy he says, no. I want the fastest machine you can give me. The biggest, the strongest, the quickest, I want that. This guy says, well, what are you going to do with that? I mean, if you're computing huge numbers and you're running big databases and you're doing big things, I can understand. But email, internet. He says, Sonny, young man, I don't have much time left. I don't want to waste 1 second. I want a fast machine. And I thought about that and I thought, wow, this guy gets it. He knows that he's got very limited days left. Every 10 seconds that he waits for a PC is 10 seconds wasted. Let's not waste it. So folks, take this into your work, into your home, into your circumstances, and consider, are you doing the wise thing with your time? In light of your past experiences with these type of meetings, with these type of people, your current situation, can I afford to do this, and your future hopes, is this the wise way to spend my time? Let it guide your time. Okay, I wanted to make some observations about time. Now, if you're not I doubt there is people like this, but maybe there are. If you're not a follower of Christ, that's fine. You can listen in on this one. This is what Christians ought to do, but if you're not a believer, a follower of Christ, that's okay. You'll get a lot of wisdom from this comment. So I'm going to make some fairly obvious comments, but we probably never thought of it quite the way I'm going to share it. Let's go. The first thing that I observe about time is that investing small amounts of time over time is cumulative. It builds up. Well, what do you mean by that, Miles? Well, let's take an example. If I go to gym half an hour a day, 3 times a week after week, month after month, year after year, the benefit builds up. The effect of that is cumulative. If I eat healthily every day of the week, all months of the year, for years, the cumulative benefit is obvious, builds up. The same thing is true. What we must understand by this is there's no benefit in one installment, and equally, there's no harm in missing one installment. So if I go to the gym 3 days a week, day after day, week after week, month after month, and one day I miss one gym session, not a big deal. There's no big impact. I'm still fine. Same thing if you're eating healthily and you have one splurge, you go for a wedding and there's lovely food and you eat more than you should do, not a big deal if you do it once. But the same thing works. I can't go to gym once, walk out and say, am I buff yet? Have I got that Belito body yet? No, it doesn't work like that, guys. You know the Belito body, eh? That Belito body. So doing one installment has no value. Now, okay, this is also true. Neglect is cumulative. So just like you do positive things, important things over time, it builds up. If you do negative things over time, it builds up. What do you mean? Well, if you neglect your body week after week, month after month, year after year, and you lose your health, you will see what I mean. You will see how difficult it is to get that health back. And maybe some of you got parents or grandparents that did that. They neglected their bodies, and then they get into later life, and no amount of money can restore that. It's really, really difficult to fix the neglect of years. You know, I've got an uncle that's really not doing well, but years ago he smoked for years and years and years, and then he stopped. But 20 years of smoking 30 years ago has paid its toll. He's struggling to breathe. He's got to go for medication all the time. Years of neglect also build up. Pretty obvious stuff, but I'm just bringing it to your attention. Now, this is interesting. Random has no cumulative value. What do you mean? Okay. On this side, if I went to gym week after week, month after month, I'd have something to show for it after years. But on this side, if I avoided going to gym, I just didn't go. And for years and years, I just didn't go to gym. What have I got to show for that half an hour that I saved from going to gym? Nothing. Because I did random things. I did nothing constructive, nothing intentional. I just didn't go to gym. So what have I got to show for it for random things? Nothing. So we trade in the important things for random things, and we have nothing to show for it. So year after year, we've got nothing to show for the time that we could have spent doing things correctly. Get it? That's quite poignant. And this last one, and this is a tough one, and here you can put your feet under the shoes, under your chairs if you need to. In the areas that matter most, you can't make up for lost time. Hear me here, folks. In the areas that matter most, you can't make up. You know, when we were at school, I'm sure we all crammed, did an all-nighter. We didn't follow the lessons. We didn't advance. We didn't listen. And comes the exam. Oh, my goodness, the exam tomorrow. I'm going to stay all night. And you know what? Often it worked. We crammed, and what do you know? We passed. We got through. Aren't we the heroes? We're great. In fact, then we developed this following phrase. You know, I work better under pressure. I work better under pressure. Have you heard that before? I see some people sweating in the audience. Okay. I told you to put your feet under the chairs. I told you. So we get this philosophy that we can do that in everything. You know, with exams and with schoolwork and varsity work, you can maybe cram. You can do a crash course, maybe even with preaching. You can stay up all night, and you can prepare a sermon, you can preach a good sermon. People say, hey, that was a blessing, thank you. And then you start to think, actually not bad, you know. I'm quite good, you know. Wow. But in the areas that really count, relationships, you can't do this. You try ignore your daughter until she's 25 and then say, let's cram. Let me spend a weekend with you, bonding with you. You missed that boat, friend. It's gone. You can't in the areas that count. Spiritual maturity, you can't cram for that. That comes with years of steady plodding. Half hour after half hour, you spend the time over time to get that benefit. Don't get mistaken here. So if you want to build up finances, you can't get rich quick. I said I'd come back to this. There is no way to do that. In an area that's as important as finances, it's steady plodding. And we had a question that wasn't asked here, it was asked in the other room about borrowing money and leverage and getting quick. And there's a lot of answers to that question, but the main answer is there's no quick way to do these things. It's important. If you do it steadily, you're guaranteed. If you do it through gearing, there's no guarantees. It could backfire, and then you have nothing. Just ask my partner. So there's lots and lots of people, my own mom being one of them, who never had a great job, never had a lot of money, never had anything that you and I in this audience would have had. But slowly, year after year, she put money away, year after year, to the point that she's now retired. She doesn't need my help. She doesn't need anything. She's actually saying, where can I give? Who can I bless the grandkids? She's got more than she needs because she was steady. She never earned a fantastic salary. She didn't do anything great, but she was steady. And she gets the rewards because she was steady. She took time and she applied it. So that's the lessons we learned from time. So let's see what Paul would say. Now, Paul's writing to the church. He's trying to encourage them, and he could have told them anything about being wise. He could have said anything. There's a lot of areas that wisdom. So what does he say? Be careful how you live, not as the wise, not as unwise, but as wise. So he's telling people how to live wisely. So he could have said anything after this. So what did he say? Make the most of your time. The one thing that Paul said, if you want to be wise, make the most of your time. Wow. That's the gift that you've been given. That's where we're all equal. We all get the same amount of time. I might have more or less money than you. I might have more or less talents and abilities. But guess what? I'm equal in every respect when it comes to time. We have the same amount of hours in the day. I might have more or less years in my little hourglass. But today is equal for all of us. Paul says, make the most of it. Use it wisely. That's how you can be wise, by using time wisely. So if we spend our time the way the culture that we live in wants us to spend it, if we let our appetites dictate to us the way we spend time, if we are not careful, I believe we're going to regret it. We're going to have regrets when we get to a later point in our lives, looking back and say, what did I do? You know, when we get out of varsity, when we get into work and we think back to our varsity days or our school days and thinking, man, I had so much time. What did I do with it? I mean, I try to tell my kids that at varsity, you don't understand. This is a great season of your life. You've got so much time. Do something significant. Oh, I'm so busy, Dad. No. When you get to work, you'll see what busy is. You know, and those of us that have gone through that, the youngsters don't understand, but those of us got the seasoned warrior look, we understand that we were much more time then than we have now. Okay, so as regards the use of time, ask the question. You now know the question? What's the question? In light of my past experiences, my current situation, and my future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing to do? Okay, you got to remember that question. It's going to change your lives. Okay, I want to go on to an even more sensitive area. And I've thought about this long and hard, and I really think I need to share this. Because I believe that in the area, let me bring up the area of relationships, I think this is a key area in all our lives. And maybe it's the reality I'm walking in, that I've got a lot of people in my offices and in companies and that are close to me, that I'm mentoring and counseling, that are struggling in this area. So I thought, let me bring some encouragement, some guidance, some teaching on the area of relationships. We're all adults here, so I'm going to be fairly frank. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be open. Frank should have been my second name because people say to me, Miles Frank Sinclair. That's it, Miles Frank Sinclair. When people say to me, can I be honest with you? My standard answer is, well, how else would you be with me? In fact, how have you been with me in the past? That if you're asking me, can I be honest with you? I'm not sure I like that question. What they usually mean is, can I be frank? Can I speak freely? Because I believe, my core belief, my wiring diagram says, if I speak my mind freely, you know what I'm thinking. I'm not asking you to agree with me. I'm asking you to hear me. And if you know what I think, we can relate, then I'd love to hear what you think. I mean, if you don't see what I see, great, we'll talk about it. And we can engage and we can grow through that. But if I remain stumm, quiet, still, you'll never know. And particularly in areas that are sensitive and you feel uncomfortable, we all keep quiet because it's just easier that way. Nothing changes. You know, I have a wonderful phrase that's on the board in my office. And it goes like this. The reasonable man accepts the world the way it is. The reasonable man accepts the world the way it is. The unreasonable man refuses to accept the world the way it is. Therefore, all progress depends on unreasonable men. Think of that. Bernard Shaw. All progress depends on unreasonable men. I'm asking you folks, become unreasonable. Don't misquote me. Quote me in context. Become unreasonable. Don't just accept and remain quiet. If you think something, have the courage of your thoughts to share it. Not dictatorially, not dogmatically, my way is right. I think this. It's not what you think. It may cause offense. And here's another thing that you need to know. Offense can't be given, can only be taken. I've told you that before. Offense can't be given, can only be taken. So if I tell you what I think, it may not be what you want to hear, it may not be what you think. If you're offended, well, then you have the problem. I didn't mean it offensively. I merely share with you my thoughts. I'm sharing with you my thoughts today. I hope it encourages. But if it causes offense, you've taken offense where none was intended. Okay, so let's apply this question to relationships. Before I go back one. When we have regrets, particularly in this area, when we have regrets and we say to ourselves, how did I get into that situation? How did I get into this mess? About anything, but particularly in relationships, I've got to tell you something. Have you ever stopped to consider that you were present when that decision was made? Wow. You're the common denominator. If you've got a series of bad decisions, you're the common denominator. You were there at the scene of the crime every time. You were the one that was there. In fact, you were the one that allowed it. You were the one that made a decision that allowed that situation to happen, be it financially, be it relationally, be it in business. You were there. So, I'm going to give you a couple of pointers. Remember that you spoke yourself into it. You talked yourself into it. And there's a couple of things that we do to help ourselves talk ourselves into this situation. And here's one of the faults of what we do. It's a bad idea to assume that if something is not wrong, then it's right. It's a bad idea to assume it's not wrong, well, then it must be right. And particularly, it must be right for me. That doesn't bring into the equation what I've been teaching all morning in light of your past experiences, your current situation, and your future hopes and dreams. What's the wise thing to do? That's what we should be doing. But to merely say, well, this is not wrong, it's got to be right for me. You haven't brought any of that into account. It may not be wrong, but it often isn't right for you. And if that's the guide that you're using, then you will make mistakes. You will end up scratching your head and saying, how did I get here again? So there's nothing wrong in general, therefore it's right for me. That's bad thinking. You can't apply that. How's this for a comment? Bad moral decisions are generally preceded by a series of unwise actions or unwise decisions. Bad moral decisions are generally preceded by a series of bad or unwise actions. Have you heard this? Now, I'm going to be specific in the workplace. I'm speaking to business people here. It's a business forum. Let's keep it distant. You see someone in the business place going out for lunch with a colleague. Guys going out for lunch with a colleague, and you're thinking, I know old Johnny's married, but he's going out with that blonde secretary for lunch. And if you went up to Johnny, and he's a friend of yours, and you said to him, Johnny, what's it? There's nothing wrong with lunch. There's nothing wrong with lunch. You've heard that before? There's nothing wrong with. And the whole office decides to go out for dinner. And there's 7 people going out for dinner. They get to the restaurant, and it's just Johnny and Sue there. Well, there's nothing wrong with dinner. I mean, our team goes out for dinner all the time. I mean, we work hard and we go out for meals together. There's nothing wrong with dinner, is there? This righteous, pious, there's nothing wrong with dinner. Come on. In fact, I've seen my pastor come around to our house for dinner. So there can't be anything wrong with going out for dinner. My folks go out for dinner. There's nothing wrong with going out for dinner. There's nothing wrong with working late together. I mean, we have to work late together. We've got deadlines to do. We've got budgets. We've got year ends. We've got deadline. We've got to get the work done. No, nothing wrong with working late, is there? I mean, it's expected of us. We have to work late. Nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with confiding in someone, is there? I mean, come on. That's what Christians do. We encourage one another. I was encouraging her. I was just confiding in her. Having a few problems at home, and it's cheaper than going to a psychologist for counsel. I mean, it's much cheaper. There's nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with confiding, is there? Oh, and she's such a great listener. I mean, there's nothing wrong with listening, guys. Come on, you guys serious? There's nothing wrong with listening. She's a great listener, and it saves me getting counsel. My pastor counsels people. I mean, there's nothing wrong with counseling. Come on, you can't be serious. Nothing wrong with counseling. I know she wasn't at work today, so I thought I'd drop by. No, but my folks. I mean, we were in the car when I was a kid, and my mom and dad said, "Hey, let's drop by and visit." So, in fact, my parents taught me that dropping by is a good thing. It's what Christians do. It's fellowship. It's called fellowship. I think the Lord led me to drop by. She didn't come to work. She was sick. I really felt the leading to go and drop by. That's nothing wrong with it, is there? You can't be serious. You can't be telling me there's something wrong. No, there's nothing wrong with dropping by. There's nothing wrong with a hug, is there? Come on. You're kidding me. There's nothing wrong with a hug. No, I mean, people hug each other all the time. In Christian circles, it's how we greet one another. I didn't kiss her. It was just a hug. Now, if you try to tell a friend what you could see, you and I can both see, friend, there's nothing wrong with any of those things. But where is it going? Unwise actions are leading you to a bad moral decision. We know where it ends. And if you had to go to that brother and say to him, friend, there's nothing wrong, and he'd have that attitude. What if it was you? Don't we do that in areas? We defend our actions. There's nothing wrong with it. We defend it. And we get closer and closer and closer to the edge. Each step bringing us closer. There's nothing wrong with that last step. But a series of unwise actions leads to a bad moral decision. Because eventually, we're going to go off the edge. Now, this next thing is really important. Please listen up. If I've lost you, please come back. Listen to this next thing. There's nothing wrong. Sorry, I won't say it that way. If going close to the edge is fine, if we're counting calories. So if you've got a calorie counter and you're allowed to eat 2,000 calories or whatever, 500 calories a day, don't eat 490. Eat your 500 calories. That's fine. If you're supposed to start work at 8 o'clock in the morning, you don't have to get there at 7. Get there at 8 o'clock. That's fine. That's on the edge. It's quite okay to get to the edge. It's time of work. If church starts at 10, get there at 10. Don't get there at 8:15. Get there at 10. That's right on the edge. It's fine. But in areas of morality, it's not fine. It's not fine, guys. Come away from the edge. Come back, because that's where problems start. That's where problems are. So come away. Anything that involves sexuality or morality, there's nothing right with being on the edge. Okay. Once you cross that line, you have a lifetime of regret. Hear me on this one. You're going to have a lifetime of regret. We're going to go into this in a second. And I'm sure all of you are thinking of people that you know that have crossed the line and now regretting it. And maybe you're one of them that's crossed the line and you're living with regret. And you know exactly what we're talking about. But God, who loves you, who created you, who says you're the apple of my eye, who gave everything for you, what is he saying? He's saying, come back. Don't go there. And I want to unpack the reasons that God does this. Paul wrote to the believers in Corinth. Now, if you know the background to the Corinthian church, they were a tough church. Man, that was a tough church. These guys came from an idolatrous background, a background where prostitution was accepted. In the temple, the prostitutes worked. Promiscuity was accepted. Paganism was the way of their times. And these believers came out of that background. They still lived in it. They were living in Corinth. And that's what they were living in. And Paul's writing to them, and he's thinking, how do I write to them simply, just so that they get it, so that they understand what the will of God is? How do I put this? How do I convey this? So this is what Paul said. 1 Corinthians 5:18. Flee from sexual immorality. As simple as that. Run. Pick up your garment and hightail it out of there. Run for all you're worth. Much like a gazelle runs from an animal, from a predator. Run for all you're worth. Not think about it, debate it, argue it. Run for all you're worth. When it comes to this area, Paul's advice is don't flirt with it. Don't get to as close as possible to it without going off the edge. Run away from the edge as quickly and as far away as you can get from it. And if we think about it, that's what every husband wants his wife to do. That's what every wife wants her husband to do. That's what every person who's in a serious relationship wants their partner to do. That's what every parent wants their teenage son or daughter to do, to run from this sexual immorality. I've noticed, because my kids, my oldest boys are 18 and 19, that's what a 19-year-old brother wants from his 13-year-old sister. Run from it. Run. Don't stay around there. Get away from the edge. We all want it in someone else's life. But when it comes to us, there's nothing wrong with lunch. There's nothing wrong with dinner, is there? There's nothing wrong with a hug. I mean, that's what we excuse it ourselves, but we want it. So if that's what's the reality, why does a parent want that for their daughter? Why does our loving father want that for us? Because it's the right thing. It's the good thing. It has our best interests. But when we don't be honest with ourselves, come back to the point I made a while ago, we don't have our own interest at heart, our own best interest. We go into areas where if we thought about it, we wouldn't want this for our daughter, but we're doing it. We wouldn't want this for our son, but we're doing it, or about to do it. Folks, take hold of your senses. Don't let this happen. Paul then goes on to say something that I think took psychologists quite a few years to cotton on, to understand the depth of this comment. Paul said it 2,000 years ago, but it's taken us a while in modern times to catch on. Look what he says. All other sins a person commits is outside the body. But whoever sins sexually sins against his own body. Paul has said sexual sins are in a category of their own. They're like nothing else. They're not worse than, they're not better than, they are different too. They are very, very different. I've found that when people have extraordinary anxiety and turmoil and regret, and they have got extraordinary guilt, and they've got complexity in their lives, and their lives just can't seem to come together, inevitably, somewhere at the cause is a sexuality problem. They've stepped over the line and they're struggling with it. You can get over most other things. You can get over losing a car, you can get over losing a job, you can get over all kinds of other issues. But the area of morality takes a long, long time to get over. It's pernicious. It sticks. It's hard to remove. And that's what Paul's saying. He says, this category of sin, different. Not worse than, not better than, different. It's very different. He's warning us. He's saying, guys, don't go down. Get away from the edge. This thing is going to hurt. It's going to stick for a long, long time. You and I both know this. We don't need to read the Bible. We get that feeling. Now, the reason that Paul is saying this isn't because this category of sin is not forgivable. It's nothing to do with forgiveness. In fact, people say to me, oh, yeah, you Christians, you're on that drum again. You're beating your drum. You know, this God of yours is such a tyrant, man. He's a tough God. He's just, you can never please him. No. This is a loving God. In fact, when Jesus saw that woman that was caught in adultery and she was dragged into the marketplace and they were about to stone her and they were trying to trap Jesus with that whole question, Jesus had such love and compassion. He said to the people, well, if you haven't sinned, you can throw the first stone. And when they all had left, he went to this woman, and you can remember the tenderness of his voice. He said, woman, I love you, but just don't do that again. That is really hurting you. That is going to hurt you. Don't do it. Because he loved her, he said, don't do it. Christ loves us. This is not about unforgiveness. This is about consequence. The reason that we are speaking about this, not because we're religious, because we are believers of Christ, which we are. We're not on about forgiveness. I'm not telling you to avoid this thing because God doesn't like to forgive you. I'm telling you this because of the consequences it's going to have in your life. I'm trying to protect you from the consequences of going over the edge in the areas of morality and sexuality. Once we understand this, Paul does something fantastic in the next verse. He says, okay, so we understand that sexuality sins are in a different category and they have this ability to remain for years and years and cause problems for years. Avoid it. Now he gives some amazing advice and sets some amazing standards. He says the following. He lifts our eyes to this higher standard and he says, therefore, honor God with your bodies. And if you can take that into this area and say, how do I honor God with my body? You can avoid a lot of the issues that you might be facing or have gone into. And if you'd done this earlier, you wouldn't have gone down there. And if you're about to go, then don't. And if you ever get tempted in the future, then ask this question. How do I honor God with my body? Don't ask the question, oh, there's nothing wrong with. There's nothing wrong with. Rather say, how do I honor God with my body? And the answer to that will guide you, will lead you. You won't go down there if you're answering this question honestly. Now, imagine if our new standard for sexual expression was this question. And boy, oh boy, some of you are saying, my goodness, Miles, you're really going on some thin ice here. Yep. Because why do I do this? Because I know the following. You'll never be happier than your relationships. You'll never be happier than your relationships. I speak to people all over the country and all over the world, actually. And the people that are unhappy are in unhappy relationships. And they can't find a rhythm and they can't find a momentum because this big thing of relationship is just, it's the white elephant in the room. And I'm sure some of you know people like that they really want to get involved. They really want to live a normal life. They really want to give everything at the office. They really want to be a great mom or a great dad. But they're not in a happy place relationship-wise. And there's this big elephant that they're not talking about, but it's there. And it's filling the room with its space. So I know that your happiness, your ability to be content depends largely on relationships. And if I can help avoid a disaster in your life, then I will speak about areas that are a little uncomfortable, that are a little bit standing on corners. If I can stop someone going over the edge, it's worth it for me. So you're never going to be happier than your relationships. And nothing complicates a relationship more than sexualizing it. As soon as you sexualize a relationship, man, you've brought complexity into that relationship. So be very, very careful in this area. So God is saying, step back. Ask yourself, what's the wise thing to do? Ask yourself, how can I honor God with my body? And then this thing becomes a lot easier to handle. Now, Miles, you don't understand. I mean, I've been single for a long time. I've been divorced for years. Man, I've been so lonely for a long time. You don't understand that I've had no intimacy forever. You don't understand this. I mean, your God doesn't understand it. He doesn't understand how frustrating it is for me. No. My God created sex, if you had forgotten. He was the guy that thought this thing up. And I can just imagine this conversation in heaven, that God finished everything. He thought, I've got a good idea. And I can imagine one of the angels saying to him, what's that? No, you wouldn't understand. Don't worry, you wouldn't understand. I can just imagine that sort of conversation with the Lord. The Lord created it for its right time and right purpose. You know, and in the right time, the right purpose is like a fire. A fire that's got in a fireplace warming a home is fantastic. But the actual flames that are burning in that fireplace warming this home are the same flames, the same process that could be burning when the curtains and the roof and the ceiling are burning the house down, killing people. Same flame, same process, just in a different context. So, you know, there's nothing wrong with sex. It's the context that we have it in that's everything wrong or everything right with it. Get the context right and it's fantastic. Get the context wrong, and Paul warns you. He says, you're entering into an area, it's a different area of sin. And if you don't like the word sin, call it immorality, call it mistake, call it whatever you like. I'm not condemning people for sin. I'm saying be careful because it's going to hurt you. That area is going to hurt you. Okay, so how do you do this, Miles? What do I do to to stop myself falling? Well, I think one of the key things is to pre-decide. Decide beforehand what it is you're going to do. So right now, you haven't met that guy that makes your hair go on end and your eyes pop out. And you haven't met him or her. And so you're single or you're divorced and you're looking for a soulmate. Write down now all the things you're going to do and say when you get asked this or that question. Pre-decide. If he says this to me, I will say that. If he says this to me, I will do that. If he says that, I'll pre-decide. It's so easy. Person's not on the horizon, not in your life. You pre-decide, write it down, and say, if I'm faced with this situation, here's what I will do. Write it down. Why am I saying write it down? There's something magical about writing things down. Something happens inside you when you write it down, whether it's a goal, whether it's a desire, ambition, or whether it's a decision. I will go here and no further. I will do this but not that. I will make sure I do this and never do that. When you write it down, something happens on the inside. So that when that reality happens, you've pre-thought it. You've gone through there before, and you say, déjà vu. I've been here before. It was when my answer is, and you give your answer. My reaction is, and you give your reaction. My decision is, and you give your decision. It's so much easier than when you're in the heat of the moment trying to defend it. Well, there's nothing wrong with a hug, is there? There's nothing wrong with popping by. And I can hear some of you saying to me, Miles, where did you come from? What rock did you just crawl out of? What cave do you live in Hilton? I mean, the air must be really fine and thin up there because you come up with some really weird things today. Yep, I'm afraid I do. I come up with these weird things, and I don't live in a cave. I live in the mist up in Hilton. In fact, people will say, you know what, Miles? Nobody does this. I mean, where have you been living, pal? No one lives like this. Nobody does this. You know what my response is? That's just a statement. Sure, no one does it. So what? And you say, but Miles, you don't understand. No one does this. Well, that's not an argument against anything. That's a statement of fact. What's your point? So let me help you. If that's where you're thinking, you're saying, Miles, no one's... What you're trying to say to me is, Miles, no one does this, and I want to be like no one does this, and I want to be like everybody else. Not so? That's what you're really saying. If that's what you say, I want to be like everybody else. And I'd say, you do? Oh, you want to have a marriage like everybody else's marriage? You want to have a second marriage like most people's second marriage? You want to have regrets like everyone else has regrets? Surely that's not what you want. Surely you don't want to just be like everybody else. You want to be average. You want to have an average life and an average marriage with an average this and an average. Surely you believe enough in yourself to say, no, I want the best. Here's what I do know. God wants the best for you. God is rooting for you. He wants the very, very best for you. That's why he gave us this instruction. That's why he gave us this guidance. He wouldn't be happy if you sat down and said, I'd be happy with average. I'd be happy with the same regret that everyone else is living with. I'd be happy with the same debt levels and the same crises and the same insolvencies that everyone else is living with. No, come on, guys. You can do so much better than that. If we apply this question, I want to close that question, repeat it for you again. In light of my past experiences, my current situation, and my future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing to do in relationships with the use of my time or with any other question that life throws at me? Amen?